My name is Tara Bentley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Association of Home Educators, otherwise known as the IAHE.
Hi, my name is Amy Bragdon. I am a second-generation homeschooling mom of 3 who also works part-time outside the home and volunteers with the IAHE.
Together, we're your co-hosts for Season 3 of the Homeschool Indiana podcast. With each episode, we'll be here to support you on your homeschooling journey, sharing practical tips, important updates, and encouraging conversations to help you feel more confident and connected. And of course, we'll have some fun along the way. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Tara Bentley here, and welcome to the next episode of the Homeschool Indiana podcast. I'm real excited to have something brand new for you guys today, and I am joined by someone who is familiar to most of our families, Klyene Varner. Kylene, welcome back.
Thanks so much. Hey, everybody.
So we are recording the first week of December, which typically is a slow season for you, Kylene, as our legislative liaison, correct? Like, this should be a slow week for you.
Yeah, so typically December is kind of like the last hurrah before we head into session. It's the time where we're finishing our co-ops and our kids are looking forward to a little bit of a slower season for the last few weeks of the semester here. We're enjoying Christmas time and all that, but this year it's anything but that slow, relaxable Christmas season. And I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't tell you that I had a 46-year-old fit when the determination was decided to bring us back into session on Monday, December 1st. So that means that our Christmas season of quiet contemplation and just being thoughtful and mindful and restful as we head in and prep for the session starting in January actually started on December 1st. So we lost all of that.
So, we get caught unaware, but I will say God is never caught unaware. And so we are so
Absolutely.
grateful for our team jumping in, and they were ready for this, right? But what we want to do today is we want to highlight something that we're doing this year with the podcast. And it is in celebration of 10 years of our establishing a sister organization, IAHE Action. And so you're hearing us here on the IAHE podcast, 2 separate organizations. We obviously work hand in hand. But 10 years ago, the IAHE board knew that the challenges to homeschool freedom were only going to grow. And so in 2015, we established IAHE Action, which allows us to do a little bit more. And so you have been a part of both organizations, Kylene. And what is, for anyone who probably, doesn't know or hasn't been listening, what is the mission of Action versus IAHE? And how do we work together?
That's a great question. So IAHE is a 501c3, and that allows us to do a lot of education on the 501c3 side, but not a lot of government affairs work. We can do very little, very, very little lobbying, things like that. So the 501c4 allows us much more access to those legislators, allows us to do things like send them packets about homeschooling and explaining why we value our freedom so much and what's at stake if we take government funding. It allows us to meet with legislators more and to lobby for our point of view, which is that parents are in control of their children's education, and we want to do that free of the government. And that is a God-given right that has been well tested in court. So that is really the difference between the 2 organizations. And then my role as a liaison is to go back and forth between the 2 and share with both organizations what's happening. And then on the policy side of things, to analyze the bills that we're seeing and to determine any threats or suggest any language changes there, but then also to help craft policy when the opportunities arise. And we have had those regarding homeschooling and freedom here in our state.
And I do think it is really important. We do have 2 organizations, 2 boards, slightly different missions that work together, but this team, the government affairs team, is all volunteer. And so we are so grateful to you and your husband, Brian, who we're hoping to get on the podcast, leading those efforts. And so what we're doing, and I'm going to let you share a little bit more of specifics of that, is we're having an IAHE Action Takeover this season for the podcast. And so you And some of your team are going to do a handful of our episodes, including what's coming up next. So why don't you share with our audience more about that?
Absolutely. So the IAHE Action Takeover, and by the way, that's a whole lot of vowels that just came out of my face. So the takeover is really our opportunity to show our listeners both sides of the organizations. So 501c4 and the 501c3, give them a different perspective into what it is that the 501c4 does in celebrating that 10th year anniversary. And while we're talking here, I just want to give a quick shout out to Debbie Catron, who really helped establish Action in 2015 and helped really drive those relationships with our legislators. Allison Slatter came on a little bit later and helped drive those as well. So Brian and I really are standing on the backs of giants who have gone before us and have really kicked off this process. And it has been a real experience for us to get to know this legislative process really behind the scenes and not just on a citizen level, to be able to sit in their offices. I don't know about you, but I view our legislators differently. I never really considered them as being people like you and I that, they put on their pants the same way every day, even though that's silly. And we can all say like, yes, of course they do, but they have lives outside of the legislature. So our goal with the IAHE Action Takeover is a couple of different goals, actually. One of them is for us to get to know our legislators on a different level. The years of us doing this now, we've really seen that people really need to be able to see our legislators as humans and not as kind of the legislative gods, if you will, holding our rights and privileges in their hands. So one of the things we want to do is get some key legislators in front of our homeschooling families here in the state and make some introductions and also hear from them. Who are they in their other life outside of the legislature? What brought them to the legislature? What is it that they see for our state in the future? What is it that they would like for us to do more of, or sometimes less of, as homeschooling families here in the state? That's one of our goals. Another is to expose our families to what it is to volunteer with IAHE Action. We've got a couple of different ways for people to do that. So one of them is serving on our government affairs team. That feels super intimidating to some people. Others are like, bring it on. And we have to find, the middle ground in between those two. Some people are really prayer warriors. So we're starting a whole new prayer team this year and getting that fired up. And then also our Guardians program and being really intentional about making those connections with our legislators. So we're going to be hearing about those as well this year on the podcast. And then really just digging into why do we want to get involved in the government affairs side of things? Why is that so important? So this season, our listeners are going to be hearing from legislators. They're going to be hearing about the process of firing up Action and why we did that. And then also hearing from our volunteers and how and why they decided to serve within Action. So that brings me to our first podcast takeover with IAHE Action. And our listeners are going to get to hear from Representative Robert Behning, who is the House Education Chairman. So he also works for the Center for Vibrant Schools at Marian University, and we're going to get to hear from him. It's a really great interview, and I'm excited for people to get to hear from Representative Behning on a personal level and not just behind the gavel.
Well, I'm real excited for everyone to hear this. I know that moms, when you are in the trenches and you've got littles and you're just trying to figure out how to get that worksheet done, that probably the last thing you want to worry about, right, is the legislative side of things. And that is why we're here.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that you have as much information as possible, give you as much access as possible behind the scenes. So I'm really excited about this. And without further ado, we're going to jump in and we're going to share the interview with everyone. So thank you, Kylene, for doing what you do. And thank you for this great interview.
Thanks so much. See you all soon. Hi there. This is Klyene Varner with a special interruption, if you will, to our Indiana Homeschool podcast. This is an IAHE Action Takeover event. Today, I have with us Representative Robert Behning. Thank you so much for being with us today, Representative Behning. We're so excited to have you here. You're actually our very first legislator to have on our podcast here today. So if my husband was in here, I'd have him give us a little drum roll. So there we go.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you here with us. And I thought maybe we would just spend some time getting to know you today and asking you some questions and maybe helping our listeners understand not just you, but our legislators as a whole a little bit better.
Sure. Happy to engage.
Thank you so much. All right. So our very first question, please tell us just a little bit about yourself outside of the legislative space.
Well, I'm a human being just like all the rest of you. I have interest in things that I'm engaged in. I actually was a small business owner for almost 30 plus years, sold my business and went to work as a consultant for a short period of time and then went to work at Marian University almost 11 years ago now. And I currently run a program. It's called Center for Vibrant Schools, where we work with K-12 schools, and really our focus is improving academic results for kids. We also have, as we launched the Center for Vibrant Schools, we also launched a program called Marian University Prep School, which is a hybrid virtual program that we support. This Catholic faith-based program, and it is actually K-12 today, and we have dual enrollment opportunities for kids, and so a lot of different things. I also do things like I currently live on a small lake, so we enjoy with our family the water, and I also enjoy woodworking and just a number of things. But education has been a passion of mine for a significant number of years, and I'm very blessed that I have a private sector role that intersects with my public sector role. And to me, it provides a lot of fulfillment in terms of being able to merge those two together.
Yeah, I like how you highlighted that. Marian University has been really instrumental in the Orton-Gillingham space and bringing our students along with reading methods that are scientifically proven and that are really encouraging. I came through the Marian program a few years ago now, and it has been a great joy to watch my students learn, and it's really a privilege to walk alongside that path and watch them grow in their understanding and kind of watch those light bulb moments go off, if you will.
I'm glad that you found success. We actually, the state of Indiana has, for our non-public schools and for our public schools, a cadre. We call it Indiana Literacy Cadre, which was funded by a gift from the Lilly Endowment and then state resources. And there are two providers that provide services to schools, us and another. And in the most recent iRead results, the state saw 7% growth in iRead 3 with cadre schools. Our cadre schools at the Center for Vibrant Schools actually saw 9.9% growth. So
that's incredible.
We actually have larger growth gains than when we kind of pulled the other provider along. But our model's a little bit different. And I have a team of people who are so passionate about literacy and so knowledgeable. Orton-Gillingham is a methodology, is a base, and kind of building on that to make sure that our teachers are successful and that our kids are able to read. Clearly a primary building block that every kid will have available to them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a lot of our listeners probably aren't aware of the cadre. I feel like that's maybe something that hasn't gotten a ton of press, and helping people to really understand the purpose of the cadre and really just equipping our students as a state to come along in their reading abilities, because we know that once you can read, the whole world is at your fingertips.
Yeah, the cadre is really created because of the failure of the system to look at real science in terms of teaching reading, and the world of reading had gone to what's called whole world or balanced literacy, where they might use some segments of Orton-Gillingham strategy or phonics, but they also use things like 3Qing. So they would tell kids that you don't understand the word, doesn't make sense, use cues to kind of figure that out. The reality is, we know now because of brain science, there's a lot more to it. And structured literacy, the science of reading, is really the most effective way to teach reading to kids today. And it helps kids who are dyslexic. There's a significant number of kids that fall in that category. It's just overall a much better strategy for achieving successful readers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, balanced literacy, it's a very interesting concept. I can remember being a kid who was taught phonics, and we were criticized for guessing. We were told repeatedly, do not guess. What are you doing? Sound it out. So it's been really lovely, I think, to see the science come out and to really encourage both our educators and then also our post-secondary people as well, and how they instruct these individuals to go out and teach reading. Because
I truly don't blame, our educators. Actually, post-secondary has a lot of responsibility in where we had kind of veered off track, because the thought in most of our institutions of higher learning had been, let's do a whole word approach. And so you've got a lot of educators out there who were taught that this is the way you teach reading. And so the cadre is really emphasizing and kind of changing what they have been told and what they've been doing for the last whatever period of time of their career, and really changing them so they understand the science behind reading. So we're making sure that we're helping students actually be successsual readers. And we've actually states banned 3Qing, so that's no longer not supposed to be happening. I can't say that it is, but
Right. No, our teachers, they're on the front line. And so they have the burden, just like we homeschoolers do. We take on that full burden, and it has been really encouraging to see phonics still embraced in the homeschool world and parents actively looking for methods. I was just helping some families the other day saying, hey, we're doing flashcards and it's not working. What else can we do? And so being able to go to groups like IM and MA Rooney Foundation, which is, of course, right here in Indianapolis, it's a wonderful resource. If our listeners haven't been connected with them, they're fantastic. I love their flashcards, just a little bias there, but, different methods.
We also have a program that we've developed based on Norton Gillingham methodology called Lessons in Language, which is available online that anybody can subscribe to. We have a couple different options you can take. There's 10 modules. You can just purchase the modules, or you can do a program where we have times available where we also provide coaching. So it'd be
that's lovely.
One-on-one coaching. And in purchase, you actually get blending decks. So, we actually provide the individual with the cue cards that helps them actually develop and effectively use the Gillingham approach to reading.
That's wonderful. And I think the young lady that developed those, I believe her name is Lacey.
Lacey Ladd, yes.
Yeah.
She's one of our, she's the one who actually would be giving the synchronous instruction.
Okay.
And she is on the video, as well as Dr. Ann Elsner is on there as well.
Okay. That's really encouraging. I've had the pleasure of meeting Lacey in person, and she's quite delightful. I think that any family who has the privilege of working with her will connect well with her. So thank you so much for sharing that resource.
We always hear Lacey's so well received. Yes.
Yeah.
She's so excited about it, and it's very contagious. So.
It is, absolutely. And Lacey also has some Instagram stuff that she does as well to promote that and show some videos. So thank you so much for sharing that resource with us. I wasn't aware of that. So I will be glad to share that with our families who are looking for additional support.
Love to help out.
That's awesome. So that's actually a great segue into our next question. So thinking now into your space in the legislature, can you tell us a little bit about what you do there, what committees you serve on, and that type of thing?
Sure. I serve on public health, which is obviously it impacts all of our lives. It has become a larger and larger portion of the state budget, especially with Medicaid and the expenses that state has accrued or over time. There's a lot going on in public health. It tends to be somewhat nonpartisan, so it's a little bit less partisan committee than some of the others. And then I chair the education committee. Indiana spends more money on education than any other component of our state budget. 50% of our state budget is dedicated to education. So it's a huge area of topic of discussion. I will say that it tends to be more partisan. Unfortunately, we do have agreement on some issues, but we have some very school choice, for instance, is an example of an issue that there's a significant political divide in. That generally providing access to homeschoolers, providing school vouchers or ESAs or CSAs tend to be more philosophical in terms of divide, and the majority party, which is the Republican Party, tends to be, we definitely are more supportive of those, and you find very little support on the minority side. So unfortunately, I think, as I have said earlier, the truth is, I think hopefully most of us are all well-intentioned. It's the direction that we go to get to the final goal may look a bit different. And I believe school choice and providing parents options is something significant, but and it's been part of my career since I was elected. But there's still a significant number of kids, parents who have chosen to leave their son or daughter or grandson, granddaughter, et cetera, in our traditional public schools or our charters. As a committee is responsible for overseeing basically pre-K through higher ed. So we have a very large area of discussion that come into play.
Yeah, you all definitely have a very large brimmed plate, if you will. And there's lots of spaghetti, as I like to refer to it, lots of noodles on the plate. And trying to keep balance of all of those, especially in a bipartisan way, I think would be very difficult. And for those that are listening and don't know that terminology, so partisan tends to mean one party. So we tend to be a two-party state, Republican or Democratic. Sometimes you have additional parties that play into that as well. But when we talk about bipartisan, bi means two, of course. So then we have both parties working together. So just wanted to add in those definitions just for our friends who are listening and don't know what that means necessarily.
And I run my committee a little bit differently than most committee chairs in the General Assembly in the fact that I welcome public opinion and public comment. It's the only time in the process that the public can actually come and speak directly to the legislators on a specific topic. So I have been very generous over my career in terms of allowing people to come. I've had meetings that last 7 to 8 hours, 7 to 8, not 78.
Yeah.
Over
that might be a little incredible. That might be a rule or a record breaker.
Yeah. I mean, I may limit the amount of time that you can speak to a couple of minutes, but I generally always want and welcome. I also have had a practice of generally always allowing the minority party to offer their amendments so that we can have a robust discussion. I don't think that we're always right, they're always wrong, and we've got to figure out a way to work together.
Well, and as you mentioned in our offline conversation, pre the recording, it's wonderful that we have a representative republic that we can have those discussions. And I think sometimes the public opinion is that the majority always wins. The majority always gets what they want. And I think there's a lot of that behind the scenes that you're kind of talking about that maybe isn't necessarily always visible because it's not sensational that, we're working together.
And, who's to say what the majority is? I mean, that's tough. I mean, we can do polling, but if we were doing on every issue, you ended up running into a poll, that would not be a very efficient system to work. And the reality is the squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease. People tend to be most vocal when they're upset about something. And when something's going well, generally don't hear from them. I mean, frankly, we hear from everybody, not just from those that are opposed, but to those who support, who kind of think what we're doing today is going very well.
And I think that is so important in the process, as you mentioned. Like, you really want to hear from as many people as want to come and voice their opinion. And especially from our Indiana State residents, they're the ones that you're here serving.
That's no question. I also try to post my committees far enough ahead so that people can plan. I know, unfortunately, it is in Indianapolis, and not all of your members live in Indianapolis or surrounding areas. We unfortunately have taken policy where we don't allow virtual comments. That you have to be in person. But we also want to respect if you're a Hoosier and have an opinion, we want to give you the opportunity to do that. So I try to post wherever possible. Our rules require 24-hour posting. I generally try to post like on a Friday, Thursday or Friday. The agenda is going to be the following Wednesday meeting. So there's plenty of time for people plenty of time in legislative time, maybe not to make time in their life if they wanted to come speak on an issue. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you differentiating between legislative time and kind of real life time, if you will.
Yeah, I respect that.
Yeah, legislatively, it can try to be a pickle sometimes to get to those committee meetings when it's something that is very important to you. And so we do appreciate that. As you mentioned, Wednesday tends to be committee day. And I noticed this last session, we started a little earlier in the House, and that was appreciated. There was less overlap possibility with the Senate, which from my perspective, I won't lie, is much nicer. So I don't have to run back and forth between chambers, hoping I didn't miss anything or have an earbud in so I can listen to both places. So I appreciate that you all made that adjustment.
Yeah, I definitely I preferred the 8:30, number one, because it gave me more time to allow people to speak.
Yeah.
And so we made that adjustment. We also meet in the House chambers so that there's plenty of space for people to come and share their thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So can you tell us what was it that made you decide to run for a legislative position? Was it a specific event, Was it just God's calling on your life to say, Robert, go forth, become a legislator? What did that look like for you?
I think it was more God putting in my heart to be a public servant, not necessarily a state legislator. I, at one point in time, did consider running for city county council here in Marion County. I had, honestly, and I would encourage any young people, one of the things that really did motivate me a lot was having the opportunity to be at the age where a student, high school, junior, senior, can come down and spend a day and just kind of seeing the process from the inside as opposed to the outside. That was something that was very, had significant impact on my life. My parents and my grandparents had all been involved over time in the community. So it was kind of a natural for me. Education has been a big issue. I've been a strong advocate of school choice ever since I ran. I went to a non-public school. I went to Lutheran school. My kids all went to Lutheran schools, had no access to vouchers at the time or any type of public funding. But I always felt that the best education would be that the parents decide, make the decision on it. Having a one-size-fit-all system does not make sense in the world we live in today. I mean, if you think about a world, if we had our only choice for a lunch was McDonald's, it would be very boring. But, you know, when it comes to food, you have a variety of things available. And I think while school is critically important, education is critically important, the way it's provided is also very important to parents, students. And I think there ought to be more options available so we can find what best fits the individual rather than a cookie, an industrial model that you just have to jump into and be part of it.
And I just want to add here, you've mentioned school choice a lot, and I just want to thank you and the Indiana legislature as a whole for really respecting the autonomy of homeschoolers and really upholding a parent's right to educate their child as they see fit. I believe that the Indiana legislature, just based on what I've seen nationwide and talking with my peers across the nation, our legislature is one of the few remaining that believe that children are given to their parents and that children are not given to the state. So I just really want to say thank you for upholding a parent's autonomy to educate their child free of the government the way they see fit.
And I think I'm very glad to hear that you are excited about that. I think it's something that really my caucus definitely embraces, that parents should have the right to choose. Homeschooling has been an issue. My sister had 6 kids in homeschool. 3 of them we're educating our granddaughter. Well, we weren't doing it exactly the way some of your friends do, where we actually used virtual education. My wife still stayed at home, was that educator, the person on the side that was supporting. So, I mean, I think education is very personal, and it needs to be what best needs that students need and what the parents believe is best for your son, daughter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know we've talked about your granddaughter being in virtual public school previously. And I think you pointed out something really important there, that even though the child is still in a virtual public school situation, you still do need that supportive person. And it could be mom, dad, grandma, auntie, whatever that looks like, to be sitting there, available for a number of reasons. And I think that it's lovely that your wife was able to make herself available to be there for your granddaughter. It's nice to hear that you all got to enjoy that part of that system that worked well for your granddaughter.
It was my wife probably could have been a home educator. I mean, she has her bachelor's degree and did training for the airlines for several years, but I don't think she wanted. I have a lot of respect for parents who do home education, because I don't think she wanted to take on quite that much responsibility. Yeah. And my granddaughter was in high school at the time, so it was probably a little bit more rigorous courses of study, and so she was more comfortable being that guidance side and that support. But clearly, you need to have, if you're going to do virtual education, home education, whatever, you need to have that adult who's going to kind of make sure that kid is staying focused and doing their work. No different than a traditional K-12. If every parent was engaged in the life of the kids we have today, we would have a lot different outcomes in terms of our schools. But unfortunately, it's not the way society is.
Yeah, I feel like that's a difficult one. And I have legislators oftentimes say, well, Kylene, what can we do? And I often say, if you want better outcomes, you have to engage your families. That's just how it works. If you want to change the outcomes, you have to change the family. And you're right, the societal structure is very different. So one of the key messages I'm hearing in talking with you is parents, get out there, get involved. So whether it is that you are in a public school, in a private school, in a homeschool, the key to success is having involved parents. Yeah.
That person behind the scene that is advocate, that is coach, that is counselor, all those roles that we as parents, grandparents, etc., actually have, I think, a moral responsibility to our kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're the future. So wherever they go is where we as a society go. And sometimes that's a little scary.
Well, unfortunately, I think our society isn't. The question of parenting, parental engagement, clearly society has decided in too many realms that they want to push everything off to let government fix it. And government will not fix it. We're not that good. And right. We need you. We need parents to be engaged.
I appreciate that. It takes me to Romans that says we know that the law is good, right? But that the law really exists to deal with really bad situations. And so we cannot look to the government to make everything right. That's just not how it works. If we could do that, we wouldn't have death and dying in prisons. We wouldn't have murder in prisons. It's already illegal to kill people. And yet it still happens there. So we really have to have an engaged society. That's going to lead us into our next question. And I do want to lead with a little bit of caution here that we Indiana homeschoolers feel really strongly about our independence from the government when it comes to education. Can you talk to us about where you see the future of education going in the state?
Yeah, in terms of home education, I'll start there. I believe that most home educators are doing a great job. And I am not interested at all in trying to regulate, get involved in their day-to-day activities. In terms of what we look at as today, traditional education, I believe that we need to start rethinking the model. You brought up earlier that, the inputs and how you need to change some of those things. We have a model that was developed at the turn of the century, not this century, but the last century. And it was really focused at training 80% of our kids to go into what was then considered the modern American factory. And 20% were to be trained and developed to go into more professional careers. Well, so much has changed. And technology and the world has changed. And frankly, it's almost flipped exactly opposite of where we were. Very few people are going into manufacturing. You've got advanced manufacturing, robots. So much has changed. And yet our systems haven't changed. If you went to sleep 120 years ago and woke up today, the schoolhouse that you see today looks very similar to the schoolhouse that did 120 years ago. And I believe that we need to focus on system change and start looking at something home educators do all the time and look at more of a mastery-based education, moving kids along. You're kind of agnostic to age, moving them along based on their skills rather than, you're 7 years old, this is what you're going to be taught, because that is not an effective way. You lose too many kids. You have kids that are not being challenged. You have kids that are left behind. Why not start looking at a system that's skill-based and move kids based on skills? So I would love to see us do more to embrace that, kind of walk away from the Carnegie units. Even Carnegie suggested we walk away from the Carnegie unit to kind of move to a more skill-based model that will, I believe, help move a lot more kids, because there's a lot of problems in schools today are problems that we've created. And by pigeonholing kids and saying this industrial modeling at this age is just what you've dealt with at this point.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And in the last few years, I think we've seen that shift in the legislature. We have the CSA program now, the Career Scholarship Program. It feels very akin to when I was in school, and this is, 25, I'm dating myself now, 25 plus years ago, where we had that VOTEC. Now it's referred to as CTE, or Career and Technology Education, where we have opportunities for kids to still learn those fundamental core subjects, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but then also have career exposure and gain skills coming out of their high schools.
Yeah, I think that you're also going to see the legislature and Department of Ed really moving the new diploma structure, moving towards an earn and learn model, especially when we get to high school, so that kids can learn some of those foundational skills, communication, collaboration, working together on the job. It's something that's very hard to teach in a classroom. It is something you really need to kind of have the opportunity to experience. And if you look at the data, which is something I spend a lot of time focusing on, we lose significant, our chronic absenteeism, for instance, almost 1 in 4 high school seniors are chronically absent, meaning they're missing more than 18 days a year, which has a huge impact on learning. And why? I think a lot of your seniors will tell you high school's not relevant to them, that, they'll tell you the burnout. The reality is there's no relevancy. So if you can take that model and start as put the foundational skills they need as freshman, sophomore, provide them an opportunity to spend 2 or 3 days in a work-based learning experience where they're getting paid at the same time they're learning. They're taking algebraic learning and actually applying it into what they're actually doing. They're definitely going to retain it. Most kids would rather have hands-on experience as opposed to being lectured to. And its function is going to be much greater, and they'll see the value. And they'll know why. I'm sure you as home educators, because we all hear this, why do I need to know this? So all of a sudden, now you know why you needed to know it, because this is something that happens in life. So
indeed. And I will tell you that just because we're home educators, sometimes that answer of because I said so, it still comes out of our face.
Not really a good answer, but
it is still sometimes just the way it is, right? Like, I understand you don't want to learn cursive. It's what you're going to do. I often tell my kiddos, and it's funny, none of my children write in cursive, even though they were all taught cursive from the 2nd grade. I told them, you have to learn this so that you know how to read your founding documents. If you can't read your founding documents, then you don't know what rights and liberties you have, and then also which ones might be trying to be stripped away from you. So it's really important to learn this. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There has to be a practical application to make it stick. One of the worst ways that we can learn is just by sitting on our bottoms all day long. Think about it. Even in the legislature, when you're in committee, you're not sitting down, you're standing up. And it's because it's a very different experience than sitting on your bottom. And you might get tired, you might get bored, whatever that looks like. But even we as adults, our attention span is 45 minutes or less if we're just sitting on our bottoms and not engaging. So think about how much less it is for our kids.
Sure. Well, that's why I think the new diploma and the direction we're moving has a lot of opportunity for catching those kids that are getting left behind.
I appreciate that. Yeah, they just need something different.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the pendulum, unfortunately, swings back and forth. You bring up when you were in school, and we at one point in time thought every kid needed to have a 4-year degree, and the reality is that we need a lot of kids to have a significant number have 4-year degrees, but there's a lot of other opportunities, a lot of very fulfilling opportunities in life that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree. And frankly, because my committee actually oversees higher ed as well. Higher ed's going to have to do a lot of rethinking in terms of the way they are providing services as well, because the transfer of knowledge has changed so much because of the device we're on right now. I could go anywhere in the world if I want. I was thinking about woodwork. I was looking at a woodworking project last night, and I was trying to figure out how to do something. And I was reading a QR code and seeing a video that gives me much more detail than trying to read through something. And so knowledge transfer is changing at an unbelievable pace. And AI is going to play into this too. I think we cannot deny that AI has a place in our world that's going to change exponentially what the world looks like. I'm excited about the gifts that AI could help provide us in education, but I also think we have to be concerned about the fact that we need to be careful about how we use it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a tool that can do great good, but can also cause a lot of destruction if we don't keep a handle on it, if you will. And I know that may not be a good phrase. Maybe keep a close eye on it is a better one to use there. But the tool is only as good as the people that pour into it. And I think we have to be careful with that. Obviously, it comes with a lot of good, but with much great responsibility there is with that technology. And so with that, our last question of the day for you, sir, what would you like to see more of from Indiana homeschoolers? And maybe it's something you'd like to see less of, but what would you like to see more of from our audience? I
personally would strongly advocate that you get more engaged. And you don't have to come speak to me, but there's a number of, because I'm a believer, but there's a number of my colleagues who really want to do what's right, but really don't always know what's that. And I would tell this, what I'm telling you is the same thing I would tell a lot of traditional school leaders is invite your legislator in to get to know you. I mean, if you want to have an impact and really want to influence in a positive way, people in the Indiana General Assembly, people in the U.S. Congress, a lot of it's relational and, getting to know people and feeling that a legislator wants to be able to feel like they can relate to you. They want to understand your perspective. So I'd say engaging would be the number one thing I think you could do is try to engage and be more active. Fortunately, that takes more work on your part.
It does.
It's not as easy to sit at home and be a home educator, which is a lot of work in and of itself. But I think to protect what we have, you have to make sure people understand the value of what you have and how important that is to you and to your children. And sitting at home not sharing does not help keep that message alive. My speaker and I actually last night had a meeting with the charter advocates, charter schools, which are public school, but they're different models. And the speaker has shared with me several times that unfortunately, there's not a lot of strong advocates for charters in the General Assembly right now. And frankly, he tells me without he and I don't know where charter schools might be in this state. I'm not going to be around here forever. He's not going to be. And it's important that you bring other leaders up and that they appreciate the value of what you're doing and how important that is.
Absolutely. I so appreciate you saying that because I think that especially as homeschoolers, we just tend to be in our homes because that's where we are. We're with our kids. Maybe, our kids are training in specialty sports. And so we're on the go all the time. And the idea of adding one more thing to our schedule feels really difficult. But especially as homeschoolers, I think we can integrate opportunities to reach out to our legislators, just like you're saying. Here at the IAHE and specifically IAHE Action, which is our 501c4, we have put together something called the Guardian Program. So for our listeners who are interested in just what you're saying there, engaging with legislators, learning more about the legislative process, and helping to build relationships, we've developed that program specifically for that so that we can help guide families. Not telling them what to do, of course, but helping encourage them and saying, this month, reach out to your legislator and just say, we're praying for you. If there's anything we can do specifically, please let us know. You mentioned the PAGE program, which I think is a great way for our legislators to get in front of our kids and have direct contact with them, and our kids get in front of our legislators. Another really great way is our IAHE Day at the Capitol, which is coming up in January. We had 700 homeschoolers come last year. 700.
It's great to see, yes, all those individuals, kids, everybody. It's a great day when you see that.
Absolutely. And how do you feel? So if we had a family who was in your district, and what district do you serve, sir?
House District 91, which is Southwest Marion County. It's all of Decatur. It's a little piece of Decatur. A little piece of Wayne and about half of Perry Township in Marion County.
Okay. So if we had a family who was at Homeschool Day at the Capitol, how would they get in contact with you just to introduce themselves and say, hey, we're Indiana homeschoolers. We appreciate educating free of the government. Thank you for everything you're doing. Have a great day. How would they contact you?
The best way to do it is go to the IGA, Indiana General Assembly website, and you can look up, actually you can put in your address in a form. It's like, who's your legislator? You put in the form, your address. It's going to bring up I think it even brings up city county councilor, brings up your state house member, your senator, your U.S. congressman, U.S. senator. So all that data is available, and the contact information for each is available. All I have to do is click on that. It goes to my legislative assistant, and then you can just send him a message. Hey, we're going to be in the state house. Is there any way you're going to have time? It's not always guaranteed that there's going to be available. But that's the best way really to get access and to let us know that you're in the community. And that you can do that anytime. It doesn't just have to be an action day.
Wonderful. And I want to highlight, so even if they can't meet with you in person, it's still an opportunity for them to drop off a little note or something like that. Are they allowed to bring you cookies or brownies or something that might be your favorite sweet treat? Are they permitted to do that?
Yeah, they're permitted to bring generally. Yeah, there's no restrictions as far as that's concerned. Many times, too, if we're not available, our legislative assistant is. Both House and Senate, we all have staff. And frankly, this is another avenue as homeschoolers. We also have interns that are work for us. So if you were a homeschool, we actually have had several staffers that were homeschooled, and they were interns, which means they worked through this session alongside our legislative assistant as they're junior or senior in college is generally when we have interns alongside. And then once they have their bachelor's degree, they can apply to be in LA. But so sometimes LAs may not be available, but interns might be available. So we generally, the process is available, and there's usually somebody there that really wants to hear from you, even if the legislator is not available at that time.
I appreciate that. And just a shout out to our legislative assistants. We also refer to them as LAs. Those people are the ones that are answering those emails and taking those phone calls. Be nice to them. There is no reason to be unkind to an LA. They work really hard and they support our legislators really well. So if you're bringing a little card or a little note or a little sweet treat, bring one for the LA too. They've earned it.
They do work very hard, and they're on the front lines for sure.
They are. Well, Representative Behning, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time. And I'm just so thankful that you agreed to come onto the podcast, and know that we're praying for you this session. And we will do everything we can to be engaged in the process.
I appreciate the process. I hope you pray for me every session, not just this session.
We do.
I'm glad that we can, I had the time to participate today. So good luck, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.